Hello, everyone. My name is Albert Cuesta. I am a journalist, and I welcome you to a new episode in our series of interviews with industry experts on occasion of the first decade of activity of the Mobile World Capital Barcelona Foundation. And today we have with us Jerome Engel, who is an internationally recognized expert in, let's say, innovation, entrepreneurship, and venture capital, which are subjects on which he lectures and also advises businesses and government leaders around the world. According to his website, he has 43 years of experience in the field, including 31 years of teaching and 24 years of venture investing. Mr. Engel, thank you for joining us today from California. I think it's appropriate, according to what I just said, to discuss with you some aspects of the close but not always easy relations between innovation, science, and business. So let's start with the specific question that the foundation is raising for its 10th anniversary. Is science the answer to a better future?
Wow. Thank you, Albert. I'm glad you started with the hard question. This is indeed a profound question that business has to understand and government needs to understand, and also the general population, including those entrepreneurs that will make a better future for us. As a professor at the University of California at Berkeley for the last 25 years, you know, you added up all the years I've been doing these various things. I hope people understand that some of them are simultaneous activities, that if you added it up in a single line, it would not make much sense. But anyway, that's an important comment, because what it means is, as a professor at the University of California at Berkeley, I had a special title, which was adjunct professor. What that meant is that I was allowed to be active in business on my own account, while I had a position at the university teaching and, in fact, leading the entrepreneurship program at the Haas School of Business. When I founded that program in 1990, with the support of the dean and some leading business notables at the time, a foundation of that strategy that we implemented, and is still the strategy today at the University of California, Berkeley, is to work on this convergence between science and innovation, between technology and commercialization. And one of the ways we worked on that convergence was to develop a faculty that included people who had walked that walk, who had talked that talk, who had done the conversion. And those people are a subgroup of a class of people that we call entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. The entrepreneur, fundamentally, is someone who pursues opportunity beyond the resources they have under their control at the moment. That is actually a quote from Howard Stevenson at Harvard University. The point there is that entrepreneurs are individuals who focus on opportunity, not on the constraints of the resources they have. So if you take that broadly, you recognize that entrepreneurs don't have to be just about technology or even just about new businesses. It's individuals who in their life pursue opportunity and then take on the challenge. They take on the responsibility of saying, well, if there is this opportunity, how do I get the resources to fulfill that opportunity? And fundamental in that is essentially partnerships, convincing people of the opportunity and getting them to join you. And this is one of the essences of entrepreneurial behavior. And when you talk about the convergence of science, to get back to your question, science technology, and business. It's a continuum. We start with science, and science pursues its own ends. Great scientists are not thinking of the commercial application of their discoveries as they pursue them. They're looking for new knowledge to acquire new capabilities, new understandings of the universe, of the physical properties, the biological properties, the very essence of the universe. Those are great scientists. Some of those great scientists also have an affinity for understanding opportunity pursuit, and they recognize the opportunities. They're the first ones to recognize the opportunities for these new areas of knowledge that they're discovering. And they reach out to others to help them. On the other side are some business people who are opportunity centric. Not all business people are. Most business people are managers. They manage their business within the constraints of the resources they have. But some are entrepreneurs, and they look for opportunities whether or not they personally have those resources. But they have the skills to get those resources. So when you ask the question, is science the way of the future to solve humanity's problems and to address humanity's problems? Science is necessary. New knowledge is necessary. We face global challenges, global warming, the environment, poverty. We face very sincere and fundamental existential problems face us all. New knowledge is in essence of addressing them, but it's not sufficient. We say something is necessary, but not sufficient. What is necessary to add to the science are the resources. Entrepreneurs help those first experimental steps toward validating the use of the science to apply it in ways that bring benefit to society. Now you say society, entrepreneurs are not, charitable, organizations. They're not worried about society's problems, but I would say they are. But they focus on one person at a time, one customer at a time, one market segment at a time. And by doing their business experiments, they validate to the beneficiary, the market segment, the user, the value of the science that they're trying to commercialize. That is the essence of technology commercialization. That is the essence of entrepreneurship in its most value contributing way. So yes, the answer, very long answer to your very short question is yes, I do believe that science has a fundamental role in helping us move forward into a healthy society.
Thank you. According to what you just said, let me raise another thing, which is many people still believe that universities were created or are designed mostly for basic scientific development, while research centers are expected instead to apply such scientific developments to the needs of business and society. Is that, has this been that way? And if so, is that still that way or not? Or what do you think about that?
So when we look at the example of Sir Isaac Newton, that's a period in which we have the real threshold of scientific thinking and discovery, observation, thesis, observation, validation, and then the validation by external sources, the essence of science, right? And we have then the university adopting that role as this is a place where new knowledge is preserved. And it takes on that place of knowledge preservation and now knowledge creation. And that leads to, not all scientists were in the university. In fact, many great scientists were in the church, in botany and other fields, right? But we do have now this codification over the years that science is the business of or new knowledge, let's call it that. New knowledge is the business of the university. But now we have a new platform, because in the 20th century, especially since the Second World War, and there's much there we could learn about in terms of how this transition happened. But with Stanford and Berkeley and MIT and Harvard, at least in the United States, I can speak to a well understood principle that we began to look to the universities to begin to apply the science. I mean, whether it's nuclear physics with the atom bomb, whether it was radar and microelectronics, these are all areas, computers for computation. Each of these areas were focused on by specific universities. I mean, Berkeley was nuclear physics, Stanford was microelectronics, MIT was computation. And while the segregations were not clear, they were understood. And this science was funded by the government. This is an important role for government. Government has a role in supporting scientific research, and they used to support it pre-World War II in their own research labs, and post-World War II more and more through universities, through structures in the United States like the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, and others, or direct grants from the Department of Defense, of course, etc. But this funding is pretty much pure science, not commercialization. Now, in the last 20 years, we've had this transition toward a recognition of the role of entrepreneurship in extracting that knowledge. There are other things we could discuss about government policy, probably beyond the scope of this interview now, that make the university a vehicle for transferring that knowledge, actually give the university the responsibility. And in the United States and now around the world, major research universities actually have an office of technology commercialization, technology transfer office, where they work to identify the best and most, the best candidates for commercialization, to patent that knowledge, and then to transfer it into industry. What's evolved most recently is that those offices have become enthusiastic about supporting entrepreneurs. Historically, they worked on transferring the technology to major enterprises because it's easier. Major enterprises are easier to deal with. They're identifiable. They have business executives trained to have that negotiation. Where entrepreneurs, frankly, are a bit messy. I mean, they don't have a lot of money. They have a lot of ideas. They're much less structured. They're not necessarily viable businesses at the point. They're just ideas. So this dealing with entrepreneurs and transferring technology from the university to the marketplace is a messy place. It's a difficult place, but it's one of the most productive places. So yes, we've had research parks which have taken on that role as an intermediary, and they're still a vital participant. We have the universities themselves leaning more into identifying pathways to use entrepreneurs to commercialize the technology. And as important, we have more and more entrepreneurs looking directly to the universities for sources of ideas, and more investors looking to universities and going with entrepreneurs to help extract that technology. So we're having this increasing convergence on this very productive place where you have investors and entrepreneurs and universities coming together in conversation, working through accelerators and other vehicles to push out these technologies, to experiment with commercialization pathways. This is, a great development in the 21st century.
So this kind of partnerships and mutual collaboration between universities and businesses, and also between public and private sectors, is the most efficient path to solutions.
Efficient is a difficult word.
Yeah, I agree.
There is nothing efficient about this process, but it is productive.
Yeah.
But a lot of good ideas that could have worked fall through and land on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of money that hopefully would have been profitable falls through and is lost.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if one steps back and looks at the entire process, it's very, very productive for the amount of effort and the amount of money and the amount of intelligence that's applied. It's not a system that can be over-engineered. It's a system of experimentation. And that's the essence of it. These are each experiment, each company that's founded, each idea, business idea, each business model is subjected to numerous small experiments. And the failure of any one of those experiments could doom that process.
Mm-hmm.
It could say people would lose confidence and back away, say, oh, it didn't work. Another team then might take the same idea, a little different, even the same, and have success for a number of factors that, market conditions may change, the talents involved, the people may be better, the science licensing might have been more rigorous and more protective. Now, who knows why some succeed and some don't. But the point I want to make is not all failures were bad ideas, and not all failures were bad efforts, and not all failures were bad investments. It's just
Mm-hmm.
intrinsic in the process that not everything succeeds, and that it can't, even if it's a great idea, and that it can't be over-engineered. We can't sit around and say, okay, we're going to put this much money here, and then it's going to work like this. It's important to understand it may work like that, and we have to undertake the experiment. And since we don't know if it's going to work, with entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial process, together with venture capital and together with good entrepreneurs, what allows us to do is make small bets, a sequence of increasingly large bets. But the initial bets can be relatively small. Now, I'm talking in the millions of dollars, perhaps, but still
Mm-hmm.
relatively small
Mm-hmm.
compared to many other investments in different industries.
Mm-hmm. Let me I don't know if rephrase or widen the scope of the previous question. Would you say that universities and research centers are going to be the social and economic engines of our future, or another way to ask, will we see the most disruptive startup companies coming out of universities?
Good question. Very good question. What I can say is that universities are transforming themselves. That on the margin, they're becoming much more entrepreneurial. In fact, many universities today want to be known as an entrepreneurial university.
Mm-hmm.
Now, certainly they want to be known as great research centers and great teaching centers. But in addition to those things, great research centers, great teaching centers, in addition, they want to be known as great entrepreneurial universities. Now, how one defines an entrepreneurial university is a subject that for another interview, we could discuss that single topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I lecture on this to and advise faculties and university administrations around the world. And what I advise them is that they should look to their traditional centers of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And think of how they can say yes to the marketplace, just a little more. Not that they should change what they're doing, but they should simply enable more access, more transparency, more communication, more networking, more building of a cluster of innovation around their centers of excellence. Now, this means there's a role for everyone. There's a role for the research scientist who wants to stay a research scientist. There's a role for the research scientist who wants to work on commercializing their ideas. There's a role for the university administrator who wants to help license technology. There's a role for the thought leaders who want to advise about general directions of research and opportunity. There's a role for investors to add value to accelerate the development of businesses that strike their interest. And of course, in the center is a role for great entrepreneurs. And these are not necessarily proven. When I say great entrepreneur, it doesn't mean some successful business executive who's done it before. It simply means people of great stamina, intellect, and willingness to learn and take risk and to see an idea through. This is not about a short period of time when you're involved. This is a lifetime commitment. Every time you accept an investment, you're getting married to that money. You're getting married to the people that trust you. And what you promise them in your marriage vow is that you will see this through. You can't promise them success, but you can promise them that you will personally give it everything you have to help it be a success.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year exercise. So my advice to young people who want to be entrepreneurs is recognize that this is a choice you can make now or a choice you can make 10 years from now. You can enter the entrepreneurial pathway at any point in your career. Mm-hmm. Many great entrepreneurs do not enter the entrepreneurial pathway until their late 30s and 40s because they've established for themselves other needs in their personal lives. They've established their families. They've had some success. Maybe they've learned a few things. Maybe they've personally matured and they're ready to take a more individual step rather than a collective step of being an employee. Everything in its own time. So for those that are ready, organizations that can facilitate this discussion are critical because it's an incremental way that people can get involved. You can get involved in entrepreneurship, not necessarily by founding a company, maybe by helping a company. Maybe you have certain expertise and maturity, business connections, network, ability to invest, whatever it is, you can get involved in smaller ways before you necessarily have to jump in and make a full-time commitment. Mm-hmm. So it's this community that forms what we call a cluster of innovation, this interactivity. That's the crucial change in society in the 21st century. People joining in these activities collaboratively to create a community of innovation.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you mentioned that about the time that it takes for these things to crystallize, because as we know, many most scientific developments can take years or even decades to materialize, and in this fast-paced world. To what extent is this a major barrier to awake, let's say, new scientific vocations among young people?
I don't think it's a barrier. I think scientists will be scientists, and the science does take decades. Or, it's always incremental based on a lot of other earlier work. But the transition from science to application is a series of steps that may involve many different business models and many different businesses. I mean, if you take any innovation, whether it's, I'm talking about fundamental platforms here, like the internet or the web or Web 3.0 or NFTs, and all these things we're talking about today. These are major shifts, platform shifts. And every major platform shift creates huge opportunities. Now, every business model and every business idea is a small piece of that. So the entrepreneurial commitment that I said takes a long time is not necessarily the deployment of the technology. What I'm drawing here is the S curve of innovation, which we can discuss some another time. But it's not necessarily this long duration around the S curve of innovation. It's in this vertical piece in the middle, the very short cycle piece, where you can get proof and traction within a year or two. The long-term commitment I was talking to was the personal commitment that one makes to one's investors about, even if you have proof, even if you have success, the investor deserves liquidity. So in other words, a return on their investment. So you just can't walk away and say, the entrepreneur just can't say, well, I've achieved A and B. Here's your business. I'm leaving. It's more of a personal commitment than that. So I don't think the long-term cycle of scientific development is a problem, because the entrepreneur has to identify part of opportunity identification is finding short cycle experiments. And what's a short cycle experiment, just as a case? It's putting up a website that demonstrates the functionality and see if anybody comes to the website, to see if anybody, running an A/B test on that website to see if anybody's willing to pay or they only want free use, or doing price testing, et cetera, around the attractiveness of the idea. These are all short cycle experiments that are recursive. In other words, you do many of them in the development of a single business. And this can give validation or invalidation to an idea fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's also interesting that you mentioned that, because I have the impression that, of course, social or business notoriety is important, but don't you think that major actual scientific advances should be given more attention? Because at the moment, many times I see that marketing advances, cosmetic changes, are getting most of the attention. I mean, this phone is having a new case texture or a new color, but and this gets lots of visibility, even more than a completely new product. I mean, can one really innovate without resorting to basic scientific development? Or maybe the way to phrase it is, what is really an innovation?
You don't ask any easy questions.
I should be saying thank you, I guess.
No, this would just be a question about what is innovation.
Yeah.
Is the new color of a smartphone an innovation? Is the Apple 13 an innovation? Is the Apple 14 an innovation? They are innovations, but they're what we call incremental innovation. They're not fundamental. They're not disruptive. They're not even significant. But they are important to certain aspects of the commercialization process. They prove the size of the market eventually, right? So there's a place for all sorts of creativity in the economic process. And the central planning, I mean, you're really calling for central innovation industrial planning. You're saying, isn't something more important, and shouldn't we focus? I mean, as soon as you use that language, it's like, well, who's we? Who's going to make that decision? Are you saying government should say where money should be spent? Whoa, that's a dangerous, dangerous place. So the market mechanism is what in Western, in Europe and in the Americas, we mostly rely on the market mechanism for choosing where capital is allocated in the later stages of technology innovation. In the earlier stages of technology innovation, the research side, really government does play a very heavy role, or quasi-government organizations. Those research organizations that allocate funds. to fundamental research. I mean, in the United States, like the National Science Foundation, that's a government entity. Now, they use peer review. In other words, other scientists make the evaluation. But at the top level, it's administrators and policymakers who make the major allocations. And the final decisions are made, the sub decisions are made by peers. This process of being frustrated, and it's not a process, the frustration you expressed about the amount of attention that's paid to these minor incremental innovations, that frustration is legitimate. But yet we have to accept that that commercialization process of the last step in an innovation is what gives velocity to the earlier steps. In other words, it's where one sees that Apple is perhaps the most valuable company in the world. I can't say in the world. Who knows what's going on in China? None of us really know. But it's the most valuable company on the stock markets. Or the second most valuable today. Who knows what it is? But the point is, where does it come from? It comes from Steve Jobs and the Apple II, et cetera, and this incremental innovation and a long story along the way. But it's when we can point to it, analogies like that it gives power, even though right now today it's no longer a major innovator. Its existence and continued innovation, even at the small levels, is what gives power to the entrepreneurial process, because it feeds back energy, it feeds back affirmation. Now today, I hope no entrepreneur is worrying about what color the iPhone 21 should be. I mean, that's not a place to waste your energy, right? Today, I hope today's entrepreneurs are worried about what might be new applications of artificial intelligence, data security. These are well-worn areas, but I mean, that leads to Bitcoin, and it leads to monetization of these capabilities. And that's just one experiment. That's just one vector of experimentation, and we're in very, very, very early stages of that. It's not like that's been done. So there's plenty of innovation space left in the whole Web3 area. Web3 being, capturing data, having it tagged in an anonymous way, et cetera, and, having people take ownership of their own data creation, rather than yielding that up to, the aggregators who currently ask us for permission, to put cookies in our phone. There'll be a new world someday, soon, where, those cookies will belong to us, and we'll capture value from them. But in any case, hopefully, there are many places for short cycle innovation. Yes. And to answer your question, there's a natural difference in the timelines between science and innovation. And I think we just need to support that process. If I can make a final comment on this, it's just the role of venture capital is sometimes misunderstood. Sometimes venture capital is productive, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's a major contributor, sometimes it's not. But what's absolutely essential if we're going to build the velocity of technology commercialization is the respect of the rule of law and the enforcement of good regulatory processes to protect investors and to allow more and more people to invest in this area with relative safety. It'll always be risky. But I just want to speak up for the role of government in regulating this. This is very important.
Well, I think that wraps it up. I don't want to take more of your valuable time. So I think I should be thanking our guest, Professor Jerome Engel, for being with us today, and also thank our viewers for their attention. Let me remind you that these interviews with world-class experts, including Mr. Engel, will be posted to the 10th anniversary section in the mobileworldcapital.com website where you, the viewers, can also provide your own answers to the 10 questions about our technological future. Thank you very much again, Mr. Engel, and to all of us, I hope to have you again with us in the next episode. Goodbye.
I would like to express my appreciation to the viewers as well, because they're part of the entrepreneurial process, creating this cluster of innovation. And we all need to benefit from your efforts. So thank you to the viewers. Thank you, Albert, for your wonderful interview.
Thanks to you. Goodbye.